Yeah, hello everybody to macroeconomics. And last week we started and I gave a short introduction what this lecture is about and giving also a little overview about the literature. As I said, everything what I'm doing within this lecture, the examples we are doing, the calculations, all this stuff will be relevant for the exam, but anyhow, we are within a social science, and so there is no right or wrong in the end, no truth as we have it in natural science. So it would be a good idea to get also another view on macroeconomics, on economic policy. What is to do with what should we do within a crisis like we have it right now? What are the right decisions? And therefore, I really recommend to look also in some books I presented here. Yeah, then also with this, I think we start today is that I recommend that you really start to crunch data because this is what I think what you will do in the future, and not only to crunch data but also to interpret data, because also there will be, in my view, a change in the next years, or there is already a change in the next years. So the last 20 years when you have studied economics management or something like this, then you were the guys who went into the data, interpret the data, and then presented to the decision makers in your companies. And what is changing right now is that one part of this data crunching is now going to the artificial intelligence and to the algorithm there. And what you are supposed to do in the future is to take the results of the artificial intelligence and interpret this and getting all this stuff together. And yeah, therefore, I also recommend that you are going into the data, that you know what it is about, and therefore start reading, start going to the databases and interpret the outcome. And I will start to present you some time series about macroeconomic indicators. Oh, oops, this is changing. So how it look like? Okay. So then I tried to define what is macroeconomics about, but also there you will find many definitions, but in a core they will be more or less the same, and I recommend it here also that you can have a look in this overview. And then what we did last year is to distinguish between positive and normative issues, and this is, in my view, very important that you are doing this because, as I said, compared to natural science, we do not have a right or wrong or a real truth within what we are doing. And therefore, we went over some examples, and when we do our analysis and then we find something about demand and supply, and then a statement like a minimum wage, so that we are setting the wage within the labor market, will cause that skilled workers will be unemployed, well, there is no meaning, or there is, as I said it here, no conviction about this statement that it is good or that it is bad. That is just a fact when we say that we want to work more if we earn more, and that the companies will hire less people if they have to pay more for them. And then in this case, we would have here an equilibrium. And if our minimum wage is higher than the equilibrium wage, then of course the companies hire less people. Then people would have been employed with the equilibrium wage, and therefore this will cause unemployment. So there should be no surprise if this happens. And this is then, of course, a normative statement. But when we then say, well, of course, there are now some people, low-skilled people, who earn, so to speak, enough money, because therefore we introduced this minimum wage within our country and almost all developed countries in the world. There we find a minimum wage. So the reason is that we sometimes see, well, people are working 40 or more hours a week and they cannot live from the money they earn. And therefore we say, okay, we raise their earnings. And then of course, these people here will now benefit from this introduction of a minimum wage. But of course, we have here also a part, they earn more or they are now unemployed. And then if we compare these two groups and say, well, the people who are now better off, they count, so to speak, more than the people who are now unemployed, there is a conviction. Then it is a statement, and this is then, of course, a normative statement. And if you go in the evening to the talk shows, then maybe you can try to distinguish, is there now a normative statement of some of the participants, or is it a positive statement? Okay, and then we did also some other statements and went through this. Then, before we start more or less with the lecture, then here a short comparison between microeconomics and macroeconomics. I think all of you have already heard microeconomics, and what are you doing in microeconomics is that you are focusing on one person and that, or at one company, and in macroeconomics we are looking at the whole economy. So we are analyzing aggregates, we are looking at the industrial sector, we are looking for the total demand in our economy. So single households, single enterprises, and here the household sector and enterprise sector. Or in microeconomics, then you calculated maybe, for example, the demand for bread or milk or something like this. And now we are looking at the total demand of households, and this is then the total consumption or total private consumption, we will call this. And if you are going to the companies, well, in Germany is still and hopefully in the future, we have a very strong automobile sector, so we could ask for the total supply of cars in Germany. And this will be then the macroeconomic view, or we are looking only at one company. And there you also see that already there is no clear distinction between microeconomics and macroeconomics. Because if we look at the enterprise Volkswagen, especially in Lower Saxony, then it is one company. But what happens now to Volkswagen, it has, of course, a macroeconomic impact on Lower Saxony and also on Germany. So there you see that that we slightly come then from microeconomics to macroeconomics within the aggregation process. Or if we look at the construction part, then you could look for one company and their demand, for example, for cement or sand or something like this. And if we look at it from a macroeconomic point of view, then it is a total investment in the construction sector. So why we are doing this and why we are not looking only at every single household, every single company, and then just sum everything up? Well, just looking at these aggregates, then we come to deeper insights in, oops, there's still a German word. Let's skip this. That we get a deeper insight how all these aggregates are working together, and then we can start to analyze it with, then we are building models, and then we can maybe get a connection between employment, prices, inflation, interest rates in general, and so on. But of course, you have to keep in mind, if we are doing this aggregation, then of course we are losing information. And these information within this, there could be, of course, very important details. So then you have always to ask yourself, what is your question? Is it enough only to look at the aggregates? And then if you see, well, I cannot explain everything, maybe you have to go deeper into the data. And well, this we are doing very, very often in scientific issues, and more or less all what you are learning in statistics is more or less the same, because what you are learning in statistics, well, you are aggregating data. You are asked maybe 1,000 people about their demand for bread or milk, and then you aggregate this, and then you say, well, there is an average demand. On average, every person drinks 2 glasses of milk a day, something like this. So this is the first aggregation. And then the second, you want to describe your data, what you are doing then. Then you say, well, not everybody is drinking 2 glasses. There are some people who drink only one, or some people don't drink any milk. Other people drink 5 glasses of milk. And what you are then doing, you are calculating some measure for the fluctuation around these average. So you are calculating the volatility, and quite often then you calculating the standard deviation. So the sum of the squared distances of every data point with respect to the average, and then you are doing calculating the square root. Well, and somehow this is also going from microeconomics to macroeconomics. And of course, all your measures, average, standard deviation, and so on, then you are describing all your data set, but of course you don't have anymore the full information about your data set. Okay, this just also for the discrepancy between microeconomics and macroeconomics. And this I already mentioned. Here are some macroeconomic questions, and some of them will also pop up within this lecture. So, the labor market. What is the impact of the labor market developments on the whole economy? And there's right now, during the last 10-15 years, something like a puzzle in Germany, because still the labor market evolves very good. So still we have a very low unemployment rate, but we are in a second row in a phase that economic growth is negative. Why is it though? Or why don't we have the more or less classical dependence that if the labor market evolves good, then also the economy evolves good? Right now, this is not the case. Or just 2 weeks ago, we had the interest rate cut of the ECB, of the central bank. What is what does this mean if the main interest rate of the central bank is changing? What kind of impact does this have on the interest rates in general within uh, an economy? And monetary policy, this will be also a part within our lecture. Then, very interesting for you, demographic changes and their impact on the economy and especially on capital accumulation. Because if your society gets older and older and older, what will happen? Well, the old people there, they more or less need their capital. Think about some 80-year-old person, and well, this 80-year-old person has maybe 500,000 euros or a million euros. I don't think that this guy will really start to invest this capital within a startup economy or something like this. Because in his calculation or in his expectation, he said, "Whoa, maybe I get ill, or it gets worse and worse and worse for the next maybe 10, 15 years, and then I will need this money." So there, I think we will see changes within our economy. And global changes. We have changes in the relation between United States, European Union, especially in their relation to China. More or less the last 20 years, there was, somehow the same idea then about let's work together. We are exporting our cars to China, they are exporting their electronics to us, and everybody is better off. But if we look now in the news, then we see there is some clash between the so-called old industrial countries and the new developing part, especially China. And this, of course, has an impact especially on international trade. And this, of course, then has an impact on us because more or less we are the largest trader in the world. And then, of course, climate change will be or is a very important factor within our society. And this, of course, has also income effects, and our income distribution will change, and also economic growth if we have to care about climate change and if we have to invest there in new technologies and really change our economy. And in the end, well, a very sad reason we have to care about is the war in Ukraine. Well, Russia is geographically the largest country in the world. I think 18 million square kilometers. So in size, roughly, I think, 4 times the European Union. And therefore, of course, because they are that large, you find, of course, in a very large country, many, many raw materials we need throughout the world. And well, we all remember 2 years ago, or now almost 3 years ago, when we cared about can we heat during the winter time? Will be there still gas coming from somewhere because it will not come from Russia. And we, before the Ukraine war started, we got 50% of our gas from Russia. And this, of course, has not an impact on our economy, sondern for the whole world. Yeah, then as I mentioned, I will talk about numbers, and here are some numbers. In 21, we had an economic growth in Germany of 2.6%. Right now, in the last year, we had minus 0.3%. Inflation rate in August, maybe you remembered it, 7.9%. Actual, I think, in August 2024, we had, I think, 1.9%. Let's see if this is right. September at 1.6, and August 1.9. I was right. Okay. Overall debt in Germany, you see, 2.6 billion euros. What does it mean? And we have to find a number where we can put this number in relation to. Is it much or is it not that much? And I talked already about demographic change. Because of this, we started to increase the retirement age in Germany until 2030 to 67. And I'm now 51 years old, and I think that it will not stop at 67. So for my own, I have the expectation that I have to work roughly until 70 years. The interest rate cut has been lowered. I talked about it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, down to 3.65%. And then, of course, we have also to talk about what is MRO, main refinancing operations interest rates. What is this interest rate about? And then climate change, of course, this is also a macroeconomic issue. And in 2023, we have shut down, oh, not next year, this is an old slide, sorry. Is shut down, has been shut down. So there we have a very strong change in the energy mix in Germany, and this of course also means that our energy costs in Germany are much higher than in other countries. If we look, for example, to France, and this of course has an economic impact on our whole society. And if we have a regional look, this was the German speed, Deutschlandgeschwindigkeit. We just built up these LNG terminal. If you go roughly 10 kilometers to the north and up and at the coast, you will see this chip, the LNG terminal, where we now can get gas from other regions in the world, especially from Qatar and the United States. So, 9 o'clock, very good. Because now what we want to do is we want to start with, so to speak, a first general concept to describe an economy. And this concept is called the circular flow. And this is an old concept developed roughly 300 years ago. And I will introduce this from a historical perspective. And you see, this circular flow was introduced by a physician called Francois Quesnay. And when did he live? He lived just before the French Revolution. So some people say that maybe he was also the physician of the French king. But, well, we do not know this in the end, but he was also a general thinker about more or less everything. And if you look at this time, then within this time, all our modern science started, natural science and also social science. And what they found within these times was the blood circle. And then they made something what we are very often do in science. We find a good concept or we find something in one part of science, and then we take this and we apply this in another part, in another science. And what they did is just, well, we see the blood flooding in our bodies, and then they say, well, of course, a whole country is more or less the same, and not the blood is flooding, but the goods and services are flooding. And what we are doing is we are paying with money for these goods and services. And then they looked at the society in these times, in the 18th century, and what they found there is then more or less that they could describe three sectors. And one sector was more or less producing almost all relevant goods in these times, and this was the agricultural sector. Because mainly the whole production was about what are we eating tomorrow. So this was called the classe productive, the agricultural sector. But unfortunately, all these guys working there, they did not own their production factor. Because the main production factor of the agricultural sector is, of course, the land, where all the crops are growing. And who was the owner of these production factors? This was the king, or in general, the nobleman, and of course, in this time, this was the church. And therefore, this class was called the class propriétaire, the people, the guys who own the main production factor, nobleman and the church. And then, of course, within this time, we have growing cities. There is coming this new part of the society. And these are the people living in the cities, merchants, artisans, the upcoming of a manufacturing sector. And they are more or less in between these two classes, the class propriétaire and the class productive. And therefore this class was called the class sterile. Well, and these three sectors, these three classes now are interchanging goods and services. And this we want now in an abstract way, we want this to describe. And this can be done in three forms. One is the account form. Maybe you had already a lecture on accounting, controlling, or something like this. Then you know this. The second one is the matrix form. There we more or less look at what is going in and what is going out, putting these just into the cells. So more or less if we put in here a 3, then it would mean that the class sterile gets 3 units and 3 units are going out of the sector of the agricultural people. And of course, we can describe this in a graphical way. Maybe this graphical way you have already seen in school. Somebody of you had seen the circular flow in German Wirtschaftskreislauf in school? Yeah? Okay. So now we want to do this at a again some German word. At a little example, MU means everything we are valuing with money. So this is money unit. And then we will look at 5 things I describe here which are happening. So the class productive, the agricultural sector, all these people there, they are also consuming. They have to eat, of course, also. So they are buying in their own sector. And right now we are in October, so we can think of that now the crop happens and that we have 5 money units within our economy. And also the agricultural sector is buying goods for 1 money unit. Then they are not owning their money, their land, therefore they have to pay rent for their production of 2 money units. And the clergymans, well, they are paying for their bread. Not everybody has done this, I bet maybe some of them have paid for their bread of 1 money unit, and the class sterile will buy agricultural products for 2 money units. And this we want to illustrate in our circular flow, in the account, in the matrix form, and in the graphics form. And if we have gone through all these 5 examples and have written down then, and then we will find some discrepancy in a moment. And therefore, I ask what kind of assumption is then needed to close our system. Okay, then I will copy this. This I learned yesterday. I think this was steering shift and oh no. Okay, own consumption. Where could we find this in the accounting form? Well, we had too many units. At 2, and this is going out. And so every time when we are going to the right side, we have to find the same number somewhere at the left side. And if we are consuming in our own sector, then we have to put it on the other side at the 2 here. And the second one, buying manufacturing commodities by the agricultural sector. Again, our 1 on the right side. And where will we find then this one at which part in the accounting form? Yep, it is, of course. And number 3, the agricultural sector has to pay a rent of 2 to the clergyman's. 2 is going where? Yep, yep. And the clergymans are buying their bread in the agricultural sector. So we start from here, and where do we find this now? Yep, at P, and now at the right side. And number 5. Yep, yes. Oh, here's H is wrong, sorry. This is not H, which this has to be an S. Sorry. This one. So number 5. And if we look also now at every single account, I think you are now in your 4th semester or something like this. So you know what condition has to be fulfilled at every account. If your accounting is okay. Yep. Yes, the balance, and balance means yes, both sides has to be equal. So, and if we look up it here, then we have 2 plus 1 plus 2 equals 2 plus 1 plus 2. Well, then we can say, okay, the first account is balanced, and in the second we have here a 2, but here we have only 1. And on the other way, we have a 1 and we have a 2. So now we could think of many other interchanges between all these three factors, but maybe you have an idea what could have happened so that everything is balanced. So a sixth example, what could it be? What could happen? And maybe you can describe who is buying what from another person or something like this. That we have a specific example. What could it be in order that also the account of E and S is closed or balanced? What could it be? At first, from which part to which part we have to write down our numbers. Well, I think obviously we need on the right side here a 1, and we need a 1 at the left side in the account of S. And what could it be? How could this happen? What happens then in reality? This is a clergyman who is buying something, and he's buying something from the manufacturing sector. So maybe he wants a golden chair or something like this. Okay? 6 E is, oops, buying goods from S for 1 money unit. Well, if I have a laptop here, then I could do it in another way. Where is it? There. He is buying goods for 1 MU from S. Six. Okay. Then let's go to the matrix form. And let's take also 6. And how did I did it? Out, in. So own consumption of the agricultural sector, then of course it is P2P. So here we have our 2. Then the second one. P is buying for 2 money units from the manufacturing sector. So out in line 1 and in line 3 because the manufacturing sector is S. So 1, this would be the second part. Where do we find this rent payment? P has to pay, so we are in the first line. And, yep, yep. So number 3. And now E is paying for the bread. And in the second row, but it's going in to the first column. So 4, we would have it here, and 5, we will find sorry, this one is wrong, or 2, no, out, this is also right, and 2, this is again, the H is wrong, yeah, sorry. This has again to be an S. So S out, they are paying 2, so we are in the third row, and it is going into the agricultural sector, so the first column, 2. That would be our number 5. Then we know that we have no interchanges within the clergyman's and within our manufacturing sector, though we can write down a 0 and a 0 here. And then we had the 6th one that E is buying, so we are going out in the second row for 1 unit from the manufacturing sector. This was this golden chair I talked about, so we will find a 1 here, 6, and the other way around, nothing. So we will find a 0 here. And what is now the same condition we find here? So plus 1 and plus 1. So we have this balanced and this balanced. What is now the condition within the matrix form that everything is balanced? Where do we find this? Any idea? Yep. Mm -hmm. Yes, right. So the sum here and the sums here have to coincide. So this is, let's take some other colors, red, 2 plus 1 plus 2 has to coincide with this one, 2 plus 2 plus 1. And let's take green, 2, oops, green, where is it? Green. 2 plus 0 plus 0 equals 1 plus 1, 0 plus 1, and, oops, blue one, 1 plus 1 plus 0 equals 2 plus 0 plus 0. So what does it mean? Every sum of a row has to coincide with its column. And the last one, I think this we can do quite fast. Going back if you are not ready. But of course I will also upload all this stuff. Yep. Well, that depends how you defined it. Well, somebody else will define it in the other way, but you have to write it down. This is just convention. Okay, then I think here we can go through quite fast. 1, we are consuming in our own sector. 2, and this is maybe also the most easy one, how you can do it, but then I will say why we are choosing also the other forms. And buying commodities in the manufacturing sector is 1. Number 2, paying rent. Oh, this again should be an S. No, not an S. E is this, or oop, how did I call this here? E. Sorry. Mm, no. Paying rent, 2, and then agricultural products, E, 1, and agricultural products by S, 2, And the last one, E, is buying goods. And S is 1, 6. And what is now the condition? That everything is balanced and our circular flow is closed. Well, the right-hand side of the income account and has to coincide with the left-hand side. The sum of the left-hand side of our account means ingoing is outgoing. The columns and the row incoming flows are equaling outcoming flows, and this, of course, we have to find here within the graphical form also. So let's have a look. I think we started with red. If we look here, this 2 is going in and out. So 2 and 2. And so out and in. What is going out? This one. And what else? There I have forgotten the arrow. This was this direction. Plus 2. And what is going in? This one and this 2. So 1. And we have also the same. Of course, you find the same thing in your account form. So then we had, I think, green, right? Green. Well, it's not changing. No, it's changing. Green. This is going out, this is going out, and this is coming in. So 2 equals 1 plus 1. In and out, and the last one was, I think, blue. And this is coming in, this is coming in, and this is going out. So 1 plus 1 equals 2, in and out. So, and this, of course, is a simple historical point of view, and of course we have also the modern circular flow of income. And in the modern way, we of course not looking anymore at the agricultural sector. I will next week also show you the number how economically important is the agricultural sector in our modern economy. And in the modern view, we then remember the comparison between microeconomics and macroeconomics. There we look at all ourselves as demanders, as private households. So we look at the household sector. Then, of course, what is very important, where many, many goods and services are interchanged, is the government sector. And then, of course, also at the other side, maybe more or less the supply side of our economy are the enterprises. And of course, we are not alone in the world. There are also some other countries. And as I told you, relatively, we are the largest trader in the world. If we look how much we are importing and how much we are exporting. So in the export numbers, we export a little bit less than China, and in the import part, we are number 3 behind China and the United States. But then if you compare how large is our economy and how large is China and how large are the United States, then looking at all, so to speak, large countries in the world, the 20 largest countries in the world, then relatively we are the largest trader in the world. So of course, if we want to describe our economy, we could not describe us as a closed economy because we are exchanging that much with other countries, and this is then the sector of overseas. And we are in a modern view, and within this modern view there throughout let's look at Italy. There all this stuff started, the banking sector, the insurance sector, and right now this is very, very important, and therefore there is much interchanging, especially if you look at investments. When we as a household want to build a private home, or if you want to buy, or in general, if a person or a family wants to buy a flat, then in general they do not have enough money to directly buy a flat or to build a house. And what are they doing then? Well, they are going to their bank and ask, maybe you can give me 300,000 euros for the next 15 years. I will pay this back, hopefully, in the next 15 years. So this is, of course, only a very little investment if you look at the economy as a whole. And so all this collection of money is done in the sector of the financial institutions in general. And here I really wrote down financial institutions. Unfortunately, from my point of view, in many textbooks or other lectures, you here find only just banking sector, because this is quite easy to describe. Well, if I want to buy a house, then I go to my bank and then I get hopefully a credit. But the banking sector, this is of course not enough if you look at the whole economy. Many things, especially large buildings, are owned by the insurance sector. So there is many interchange. And then look also at the demographic change. Well, we have in Germany some kind of another pension system, because our pension system highly depends on how many people are working. And I'm working, maybe you are also working, and maybe then if you look at your calculations, then you see that you have to put from your money roughly 20% just away, because from this 20% we are paying our pensions in Germany. But if you're going to the United States or to UK, there you don't have this. There you are paying for your own. Then this 20% you take for your own and you put it where you put it in some pension funds. And hopefully in 30 years, this pension fund is still there, and then you get, when you are retiring, this money back for the maybe next 20 or 30 years. And therefore, these pension funds are one of the largest investors in the world. So the large pension funds in the United States are more or less, I think, if you count this, in the within the 10 largest financial institutions in the world. So here in general, all this stuff, collecting monies and then investing, is going over the financial institutions sector. And then very important, we in a modern circular flow looking at the money circulating. So we are valuing everything with money. Of course, on the other hand, you can say this is 3 breads for 6 euros or something like this. But if you look at the direction of the arrows we put in the graphical form, then the direction means money flows from sector A to sector B. And then we have the axiom of the closed circle, and this means all incoming flows equaling all outgoing flows, not in a whole, not only in the whole, but also at every single sector. And well, if we then want to find the numbers, we have to write at these arrows. Unfortunately, we see that we do not have all the information we need, but we then assume that we have considered every relevant flow. Okay, and this we will do then. What are the main flows between these 5 sectors? This we will do then next week together. Because on Thursday there is our unification day. Okay, thank you very much for today.